4 skydivers are crowded into a Cessna as they prepare for a group skydive. Sitting in the back of the cramped cabin, 20-year-old Andy Judy eagerly awaits the jump as pilot Bob Yaley takes the plane up to 10,000 feet.
I want to swoop the pool!
At the target altitude, the skydivers edge out onto the wing, the 100-mile-per-hour winds tearing at their jumpsuits. On the count of 3, the group lets go. And that's when it happens. 3 of the skydivers fall, but a helmet camera captures Andy swinging helplessly from the bottom of the plane. The booty of his jumpsuit is caught on the edge of the landing gear. Andy's fellow divers plummet earthward, panicked by the freak accident. On the ground, Tim Sauer is the first to become alarmed.
I heard the chutes starting to open. I saw Grant's chute open first, and then Adams and Jim's, but Andy's chute never opened.
Tim rushes over to the landing zone to find out why.
That's when I found out that Andy was hanging on the plane.
While panic sets in for Tim, up in the sky, pilot Bob Yaley doesn't know he still has a passenger. In fact, he's getting ready to turn his plane home. But when he leans over to close the plane's door,
out the corner of my eye, I just caught something. It just didn't look right, didn't feel right. So I opened the door again and leaned over and looked out, and I saw Andy hanging upside down. I couldn't believe what was happening.
Bob can tell that Andy is absolutely terrified.
I could see the area of his face that was exposed through the face mask. I don't know, the look of terror. I mean, he knew what was going on, and that's maybe not, that was my assessment.
Bob also realizes that his own fate is now tied with Andy's. He radios the skydiving center below.
He said, Don, we have a problem.
Don Bick runs the skydiving center and taught Andy Judy how to jump. With his pilot and his jumper in the air, Don realizes he is the man who must figure out how to rescue them.
I felt that it was my responsibility to end this in a positive way.
As Don and his ground crew brainstorm for ideas, Bob suddenly radios in with more bad news. Seconds earlier, his eyeglasses were torn off by the wind as he stuck his head out to check on Andy. Now his vision is severely limited.
It was another thing to go wrong that we didn't need at that point.
Seems like such a simple thing, but put in that environment, it was devastating.
To make matters worse, during the past half hour, Bob's fuel supply has dwindled.
The plane was at the point where the wings were shaking a little. It didn't want to fly.
And there's an ominous change in the weather. Dark storm clouds are gathering on the horizon.
I can see buildups of thunderstorms. I can hear air traffic control actually vectoring some aircraft away from us.
Down in the flight center, Don feels the screws tightening.
I couldn't believe that this was happening. It can't be compounded anymore. I've got the weather coming in. I've got a plane running out of fuel. I've got Andy dangling underneath the aircraft. I've got emergency personnel showing up. It's not going to help.
Don and Bob realize they've completely run out of options, except for the one they've struggled this whole time to avoid, landing the plane with Andy beneath it. Now Don has to make the hardest call of his life.
I keyed the mic and called Bob. Asked him to land the plane and make it the shortest and softest of his life.
Don tells Bob to land the plane on the grass next to the landing strip. Even so, the impact will be like hitting a wall at 60 miles per hour.
We had about 75 emergency personnel waiting on the ground. I asked them to clear every stick and stone and any other debris that might be found in the grass alongside the runway once we made a decision to put Andy on the ground.
In the tense moments that follow, the pilot circles the landing strip, straining to focus his blurry vision, trying to visualize what he must do.
You had to glide Andy on, as if he's sliding home to home plate.
As the plane drops toward the grassy field, everyone wonders, after all this time hanging upside down, does Andy have any strength left? To Bob, the last few seconds before touchdown seem like an eternity.
It's one of those situations where there's a lot happening, but it's as if you're seeing every frame freeze picture by picture, just slow motion.
Then, at last, Andy hits the ground.
And I knew as soon as Andy touched the ground, it was time to put the wheels down and stomp on the brakes.
Incredibly, Andy lifts his head up at the last second, a valiant effort to save his own life.
But how does somebody survive something like that?
There was a cloud of dust where he hit, and I saw his body come up above the grass one time, and then it didn't.
Tim's heart stops. He has no idea if his son is alive. Tim rushes in with the emergency crews. That's when he sees his son's limp body lying beneath the plane.
Both his arms were just, the skin was raked off, both of his arms and his side. There was hardly any skin left there.
He waits breathlessly as one of the rescuers removes Andy's mask.
They flipped the face mask up and he opened his eyes and he looked up and he said,
"Man, I'm lucky." And those were the only words I said until I got back from the hospital.
Andy has survived. After dangling upside down and being battered by the wind for 40 minutes, Andy had made his peace and had prepared himself for the worst.
I guess I reached a point where I just accepted I could die.
But when he saw the ground rising toward him, his will to survive took over.
I pulled myself forward so that my head wouldn't hit the ground first and that the parachute on my back would. I knew that, death was a possibility. I wasn't in a good situation. I just had to make the best of it.
It's a moment Tim will never forget.
that was a great feeling to hear him say something. He didn't look very good, but he said that.
Seconds later, Don arrives.
We both stopped and got out, and I said, Don, I think he's going to be all right.
We finally broke down and cried pretty hard, gave each other a hug, and then continued to do what we needed to do.
Following his ordeal, Andy is airlifted to the hospital. Amazingly, he is treated for injuries no worse than scrapes and bruises. That same afternoon, Tim drives Andy back to the dive center to show off his battle scars.
There he is, the man of the hour.
It was a real good feeling to be bringing him back, and everybody was real happy to see him.
The jumper, the pilot, the dive master, the dad. As distinct as their eyewitness experiences were, these men's memories will be forever bound by the terror they shared on the day Andy Judy's world turned upside down.